We're here in Florida. It's the third time I get to sit down with you for an episode of the podcast, and it's really cool. You got a project, the first CyBe house permitted, going up here down the street, uh, and you guys are now looking to expand in the American market as the 3D printed construction industry is exploding. What are some of the exciting things we're going to be able to talk about today?
What are we going to talk about? New technology, new projects, as well as new partnerships that we have here throughout the United States.
Let's start with the new technology. So I think my audience is familiar with your crawler, which is really easy to set up, really easy to clean. I did your operator training 2 years ago. I think it's about to expire maybe, but that was a really great experience and upgraded my understanding of the technology. You guys always talk about hands-on learning, learning by doing is your motto. It's still the motto?
Yeah,
I like that a lot. So the new technology, there were rumors of a gantry system 2 years ago. Now you guys have stepped up the progress in that field.
Yeah, it all started back in 2019 when we had a collaboration with an Indian company called Sarpojipalunji, and they asked us, can you do a G+3 apartment complex? And with our robotic system, we were able to print elements and then assemble it. And then eventually they said, okay, make it a G+7 apartment complex in Mumbai. So we had to figure out to build that, but also beat the local economics in India. And that's a different economy than here in Europe or in the United States. They're building way cheaper. Less labor costs, of course. So we had to try to figure out a way to beat that, as well as building in a seismic area in Mumbai. So we came up with a model to print the floor and the wall in one go. But we couldn't do that with the robotic system. You want to do that with a bigger system. So based on that, we took our designs of our gantry that we made back in 2014 and 15 already, and took those designs and created a gantry system specifically to build those floor and wall systems in one go. And then we determined you don't need to have a big gantry like Cobalt is making 12 by 12 meters or a rather small one. You need to have like a middle-sized gantry system of 7 meters by 10 meters by 4 meters, which enables you to build 2 of those modules in one day. And also with that system, it's, you print, and then with the secondary mixed pump system, you're actually pouring the floor at the same time. So that when you end printing the walls, also your floor has been poured. And that can be finished the days after, since we have this fast setting material, which also is hydrated within 24 hours. And that allows you to finish it, to have it plastering with the windows, with the roofing, the lighting, in the 4 days after you've printed such a module.
A major complaint for gantry systems is the setup and takedown on site, having to put the anchors in.
True, but that is why we said you need to have a gantry system in a factory, so build a modular off-site, and then have a principle. So there are a lot of structural principles in our concept in order to drive it on a truck to the job site, and then like Lego, just assembling your building. And then eventually it doesn't matter how big your building is, you just assemble more modules. And within the structural principle, you can adjust it so that it complies with every seismic loads or wind loads that you have here in Florida or in India or wherever globally.
Yeah, it's definitely a different approach than some of the other gantry system groups have been taking, trying to encourage groups to do printing on site, versus you're clearly taking a stand of the gantry system we're developing is for off-site construction.
Off-site,
you set it up in the
and
factory.
then a factory like building a car, and then actually using something from out of the modular construction community. So you're actually combining the 3D printing community and the modular construction community.
Interesting. And that will also be off-site in the same factory?
Yeah.
So you'll have multiple different pieces of large equipment, a printer, some other prefabricated automation.
Yeah, correct. We work in the Netherlands with partners that actually offsite make the kitchen and the bathroom, and then we just put that in place, so that eventually, in the end, it's about efficiency of the process, and based on efficiency, you can reduce the cost. Within the project that we are doing ourselves with CyBe Real Estate, we've got land in the Netherlands where we are building an apartment complex for 12 people.
Nice.
Currently, we are selecting those 12 people that can rent it. In those houses, in next month, we're going to submit for the construction permit. We can reduce eventually the construction costs by around 30% compared with conventional construction.
In your estimates?
Yeah.
Wow.
The estimates currently we have all the quotations. So if we get the permit in April, we submit for the construction permit. It will take 3 months in the Netherlands to get the permit, which will be by July. Then we can start construction, printing in our factory by August, September, and it's envisioned to assemble everything by November, so that by the end of this year, everything is being delivered turnkey.
Wow. And that'll be the first permitted building you've used that system for?
Yeah.
Very
That's
exciting.
also, we want to do it first ourselves, so that entire project, so that we have the experience, and
Yeah.
based on the experience, later on this year also, the same gantry that we have in the Netherlands will come here to Florida, so that we also can do it here, but also showcase that, so that our current clients as well as new clients, they can start purchasing the gantries and actually build in the same way.
Yeah, that goes a long way, giving customers that certainty of seeing you've done it before versus expecting them to figure it out on their own.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to have customers that buy a printer and then they need to figure out the material, the design and engineering. That's why we have our building and society team in place to support that. That's why it's relevant or actually crucial to print ourselves in Florida. So that way we came up with establishing CyBe Construction Florida in order to work together with James, who has experience with a cobalt machine, to do this building and all the projects afterwards.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're also using a slightly different mix here than you were using. I know in the past you had mentioned it was possible to ship 30% of the mix solution and source the rest.
Yeah.
And now you're using a 3%.
Exactly. We work in Europe with Corridor from after the beginning, since 2012, tweaking the material until 2013. We call it the CyBe mortar. But with them, we are in a collaboration also with GCC, which is located throughout the United States and Mexico, and together with CTS, which is a company also located here in the United States. And with them, we can source almost in every state and produce the CyBe mortar locally.
Nice.
And that's also crucial in order to open up the American market.
So you have a printer in Texas at a university, another printer in Texas at a business. I know you have a lot of printers shipping out this year to different American groups.
Yeah.
Are the Texas groups able to use the same mix design as you're using here?
They are able to use the same mix design as that we are using here in Florida, but we also see that our partner in Texas, which is currently building the first houses there, they're using their own mixture, a geopolymer, which is quite interesting, because with that material they don't only cut cost, but also they reduce the amount of carbon, CO2, while producing it.
Some people have the perception that if they buy a CyBe printer, they're locked into your mortar, but that's not
No,
the case.
that's not the case. And they're free. We are working also with other companies, material suppliers, to test their materials, so that we know if a customer wants to work with, let's say, Sika or Heidelberg or Lafarge or with Laticrete or any of the other companies, then we have the experience already how to process it, what the mixed pump ratios would be in order to be capable to using those materials. Of course, we've got more experience with our material. Our own projects will always be with our material, but it's free for other customers to use other materials. For example, our partner in Morocco, he is actually using Lafarge material, which comes from Spain.
Interesting. And so the material, if a customer wants to use something new, do you help them with that process?
Yeah, if they can ship some material to us or ship the properties, the setting time, etc., then based on that we can advise them how they can process it with the amount of water, the amount of additive. We are using a retarder. Maybe they can use an additive that is accelerating the setting time, depending on the material. That's also the printer that we shipped last year to Hong Kong. We add the additives within our mixed pump system and then pump it through the hose. We also have a secondary for the 2K to add the additive, like X3, for example, in the nozzle. So we've got different options in order that goes with the printing systems.
That's for both the robot arm and the gantry?
Yeah, correct.
So you have a hopper at the extruder head?
Exactly. That's an option, and that depends on what material you're using.
Did you develop your own 2K head?
Yeah.
That's a process, right? Those are expensive.
Wasn't as expensive as developing the gantry for the last 2-3 years.
Most groups that sell just the 2K unit adapter, it's like $150,000 for the adapter.
No, it's way less. We do it for 39,000.
Yeah, I think Bauminator,
Mm-hmm.
their system is like 150K.
Yeah.
Um, there's a couple other groups. I haven't heard of a
With
$40,000.
us, it's just an option of 39,000 euros that comes then on the either the robotic crowder or on the gantry.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
But that's also, like I mentioned, building PPVC like Lego, assembling everything. That's also what our beliefs is in within the machinery. You have your basic core machine, and then you need options in order to stack on it. If you want to process different materials, or if you want to print different layer width, etc. And that depends. In every country, we see construction is different. So you need to have a system that can be adjusted to what is locally common.
How similar is the mixed design for the 1K and the 2K?
Um, how similar? They all have this 30% CyBe compound,
Mm-hmm.
which always is the same, and that's also it. That compound is, for example, being shipped also to New Zealand, and then with local aggregates you can play. In New Zealand, actually, we are also looking to integrate volcano ash. In Morocco, they're actually looking into integrating rubber waste of tires, so that reduces the sand aggregates that they
Mm-hmm.
need. I know that our partner in Vancouver, they want to see whether they can reduce the sand aggregates and replace that by forest wood. So a lot of material developments are happening globally.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the difference would be in the retarder and the accelerant.
And if we use our own compound, eventually that's also the cementitious material, and then you can play with it with, in this case, a retarder, but with other groups which have a different compound. And the materials then may be based on a geopolymer or on a OPC, a Portland cement, and probably indeed they would need an accelerator.
You have a lot of accelerant in your dry mix, and so it cures or
Yeah,
starts
the,
to
the, the, the
solidify quick.
compound itself, the cementitious material itself is already very fast.
So within like a couple layers, it's already feeling solid, which is
Yeah, like
fairly unique.
depending on the size of the wall element of 3 meters at 10 feet, you have like 4 or 5 layers, and then it's already hard.
You mentioned Sika. They have a mix that's kind of similar, hardens fairly quickly. Is that has the Sika mix run well in CyBe printers? It's okay.
Cannot disclose too much about
Okay.
that. I mentioned a lot of companies, so yeah.
Fair enough. I haven't seen any Sika printed houses yet with a CyBe printer, so or Sika. I'm not aware of any Sika printed houses. There probably might be one or two somewhere, but anyway, the American market's really been heating up. So you mentioned there's a printers going to a bunch of different states. How much of that are you able to talk about?
At this moment, we have around 7 or 8 states already. And based on it's about credibility, we print ourselves here, figured out the local mixture, complying with the local regulations, having a construction permit. That helps in order to, in upcoming weeks, to add a couple of more states where printers will be sold. Almost daily, new customers come here. If they see eventually and they can feel the concrete printed walls, yeah, they're sold. And based on that, also in the last couple of months, with most of them, we also, that's important, created a business case. So we compared their buildings that they want to build conventionally. We compared that, what if you would print it with either a gantry system or a robotic system, and we could indicate that we could reduce the cost by 10 to 20%, which it gives them a feasible business case, which allows them to purchase the machinery.
Yeah, once you have that proven out with completed projects, it's going to be a
Yeah.
no-brainer
So
sale.
it's not about here this project about within 1.5 or maybe 2 weeks printing it. And there has been a tremendous work together with James, with GCC, with Cougador to get the infrastructure ready. And now actually that is in place, not only for us here in Florida, in the northern part of Florida, but actually for all the potential customers that we have here. So and if we have our own designs of buildings, etc., on the shelf, they can just buy a printer and actually within a couple of months start construction and delivering those buildings way faster than they would do in a conventional way.
Yeah, I think something I was thinking about yesterday, I think of all the people in the 3D printed construction industry, you may have taken on the most personal risk in terms of you didn't raise any external money. You worked with your family and some, your family has a construction company in Oos.
Yeah, right.
So you have construction experience, and
Last year they actually celebrated, or we with the family we celebrated the 100 years of
wow.
that company. So currently my brothers took it over 2 years ago as a fourth generation. And so there is a lot of experience in construction, and I think that also sets us apart compared with all the other companies. And that regarding, and you mentioned we didn't raise any money, we are actually preparing for next year to raise our first funding investment and then actually scale it up.
Yeah, and that's really powerful that you were able to wait. That risk you made
Mhm.
will have paid off at that point when nobody kind of robbed your equity cheap.
No, yeah, true. We hope that will going to pay off in the upcoming 10 years. But I think now is the time because we have everything in place. Bootstrapped it, paid for it ourselves.
As opposed to other people's money.
Exactly. And based on that, we are in control. We have been able, therefore, not only focus on the robotic system on the crawler, but also developing a gantry and other stuff. Actually, have a lot of proof of concepts, building our own buildings as a real estate company. What we also have in place with CyBe Capital. We've got like around 7 companies currently. With CyBe Capital, we can provide leasing agreements so that a customer doesn't need to purchase the printer, but actually they would lease it, so they don't need to have this big investment of 250 or half a million euros to pay for it. They can just lease it. So we've got a lot of things in place, which actually everything is focused on helping our clients to easier get a printer and start building. So that over the last 10 years, this year we celebrate 10 years of CyBe. I think one of the longest companies in 3D concrete printing, actually. We've got a lot of it in place actually to make the next step and really scale it up, not only actually here in the United States, as well as in other places like South Africa or in Saudi Arabia.
I wonder how much the Casa 3D website costs, and then I could say I'm the longest in 3D printing.
Yeah, but you can see I started back in 2012 when I saw a movie from Barry Krasnevich, and I thought, hey, what he is doing, it's not that difficult. It's some material, it's some hardware, it's some software. Sure. Hey, I can develop this. But based on that, I saw an entire market starting up, and currently a lot of other companies, they start like 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 3 years ago. They don't see what already has been in place. And that's actually, it's really nice to have seen and experienced, and actually also knowing a lot of people in this community.
Yeah, absolutely. And so where do you see the market heating up the most? Like, is Europe going to be a big market for 3D printing construction?
I think the American market will grow the fastest in the upcoming years.
Short term.
But short term in the upcoming 10 years. Then because Europe is it's one continent with a lot of different countries. And America is one country. It's huge. So that will grow currently the fastest. We are focusing also on other countries like India, etc. But there the economics are more difficult. But it has been said that like in every country there is a demand for housing. In the Netherlands we need by 2030 1 million houses. In Saudi Arabia they need, I don't know, a couple of million. In South Africa they need 2.5 million. So in every country there is a demand, and the current construction industry, the productivity of the amount of houses that are being built cannot cope up with that demand. So there is a huge opportunity for 3D concrete printing if you do it in the right way. Also for other construction methodologies. In the Netherlands currently there is a big development of wood construction, or what you see also here throughout the United States as well as in Europe, is modular construction. And what we believe is in automation with printing, actually combining it, like I mentioned, with modular construction in order to fill in just a little piece of that demand. But the demand is so big that a lot of opportunities.
Yes, certainly. The challenges of a startup this was your first startup venture, right?
Mm-hmm.
What were you not expecting?
What did I didn't expect anything. It's like walking. If you expect something to happen at step 10, you shouldn't focus on step 10. You should focus on the first step. And if you have achieved that, then you can focus on the second step. And then actually building it up with every step. And then that is actually a learning process. And like I mentioned, learning by doing. Every step that's something new. And that's also with CyBe we try to do. Like every year, we try to add something new to something what we are already doing in order to improve the company, ourselves, etc. And that's nice to do it at a young age. I started with CyBe when I was like 25. Rather than starting it with a lot of other companies. People started when they were 45 or 50, so they have also quite a different exit strategy than that we have.
Do you have an exit strategy?
No, no, yeah, we want to raise. We want to start raising capital, and that's also then for the current team members, and then scale up the value. Like I mentioned, I'm still 35. If we are going to do this in the upcoming 10 years, then
That's step 1,000.
then I'm 45, and then we will see what will happen afterwards. It would be nice. I'm from a family-owned construction company to eventually hand over the company in its whole or partly to a next generation. That is it in our DNA.
Yeah, that's a good exit plan. So, what about Dubai in the Middle East?
What about Dubai? They have, of course, and were quite lucky back in 2016 that Sheikh mentioned by 2030 or so, 25% of all the buildings need to be printed.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's getting close.
Yeah, well, that's indeed within just 7 years. So there are with the governments, the RTA or DWA or Dubai municipality, a lot of programs actually to build by means of printing. But then the economics come in play. Printing in Dubai is not always competitive compared with local conventional construction. So that's what they are struggling with. But also, if they have a project, they need to bring in a lot of materials. So the price of printing is always higher due to transportation costs and getting people with knowledge, etc.
To my knowledge, they don't have a single new printed building since I was there 15 months ago.
No, they have. Hey, you were there with in Abu Dhabi, right?
Yeah,
With a building that
halfway house.
Basics
Yeah.
did. Yeah, true. I think indeed that's their last one. They have a design to print a mosque. They are currently searching for who is going to print that, or maybe they already found a company. But that's the thing, they always need to bring in stuff from outside Dubai, and that will increase the cost. And then they, based on the projects that we are calculating for there, they conclude it's not interesting to print because they don't have the local knowledge or sources.
Yeah, it's tough to imagine they get to that 25% number by 2030 at the
It
current
might
pace.
be if you use PPVC and set up a factory locally and localize everything, then actually you can compete with the other conventional ways of construction.
What is PPVC?
Prefabricated, pre-finished volumetric construction
Okay, so that's
for printing with the gantry, the floors, and the walls in one go.
what you've been talking about the whole time.
Yeah.
Cool. How many floors high can you go with the PPVC system?
I don't know. We are currently working on the 4-story building in the Netherlands. No earthquakes. Based on that, we scale up because it has been designed to do a G+7 in India with earthquakes. What is crucial is you need to be able to adjust the structural principles to have, if you want to go higher, the ground floor columns, they need to be bigger because they need to carry more weight. And that's suitable within the system to increase the width, the sizes of your column, or by adding additional regular reinforcement. So eventually, what I would say, the sky is the limit. But I would like to do it like step by step. For our own project of 4 stories, and then somewhere else a G+7, and then gradually scale it up.
So the 12-unit building you're doing in the Netherlands, is that in Oos?
That's in Eindhoven.
In Eindhoven. So
which is south.
Your factory is still in Oos?
Yeah, yeah.
So you'll ship from Oos to
Also,
Eindhoven?
yeah, just half an hour drive. And then those modules are all designed that they can be carried on a truck. So every module on one truck, and then just being assembled. And then what we have done is, what I've learned at my father's company, you want to have dry construction, so not pouring concrete on the job site. So everything is being eventually bolted. And then with that, you can also deassemble it, debolt it again, and then use those modules in a different way, in a different location. And even configure a whole different building.
Sure. So it would just be resting on the slab or foundation, and it can be moved.
No, yeah, just on the foundation, and then actually the slab is already being printed.
That's pretty interesting. There's a lot of modular systems that have like prefabricated systems that fit on a truck and go into place. Um, I think there's some rule in America about like something might be a mobile home if it's not permanent, if it's a temporary structure and the financing is different.
Hmm.
But I guess the other guys that ship units on a truck build houses that way that look regular.
Yeah.
I guess there's some way to do it. But what challenges have you faced entering, getting permits in the American market? Be easier, more challenging than other
It
permits?
was actually rather easy because we work together with James as a general
Yeah.
contractor, and he did in the Tallahassee building with, I believe, printed farms with a cobalt machine. So he already faced all those challenges with that project, and actually we used the same structural principles with our system as that building. So it was
Easy.
actually easy.
That's good.
So James, I think, took within his first building a lot of challenges.
Yeah,
But what
definitely.
we have done also, we made sure within this building, as well as I believe within James, within the Tallahassee building, that it complies with the local regulations by placing regular reinforced columns within the walls. So you've got a regular RC frame.
Is there any way to reduce the structural requirements of the, or change the structural measurements of a printed wall?
Might be possible, but it takes a lot of development and then eventually certifying that. And then you, as you are building globally, you need to certify it in every country, which is a tremendous, long and time-consuming and costly process. So we say, don't do that. Just make sure that already you can print faster and have a regular reinforced column, for example, within every wall element, so that you can easily start using the system and already reduce costs by 10 to 20%. Right? We know that there might be an opportunity. A lot of universities are developing things, but I think that's for the future
Is there
to develop.
room in the market for a company that just helps with certifications, has all the testing equipment? I know it's like some millions of dollars of testing equipment. So if they just had like say $10 million of the lab and then
Yeah, actually, there are company of not institutions that are at this moment testing and certifying, for example, these walls, so that eventually everything is, for example, with the ASTM compliant.
yeah,
I
it's
think
like
also Stefan Mansour, you know him, is working on these things to eventually have the quality systems in place, where then in future companies like CyBe or Cobalt, etc., need to comply with.
last time I talked to him, they're not touching anything related to changing any structural elements. They're just looking at the processes,
Yeah,
and the current literature that they published doesn't touch on anything changing structural
no,
calculations at
no, it's more
all.
like the quality of the print itself
Yeah,
that you provide with the system
but
and the materials you use.
saying they will get to that.
That might be a next step.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd really love to see that.
And then it's not only the ASTM, but also other certification institutes that are testing material. They're making their first steps because the market is rather new and growing. So they make now, as the market is growing for printed concrete buildings, they're making also their entrance and starting with the first tests.
I don't think those guys are carrying their weight. They should be doing more testing faster, trying to get more things certified, more things available to print.
If the market grows quicker, because we're now building one building, after that the second building, etc. But if you are going to build maybe 1,000 buildings, 180 here, 120 there, etc., then probably also they will be way faster.
I would like to see them getting started on that in the first couple dozen once it becomes a promising technology. Now there's over 100 printed homes in the world. They could really make a big difference.
Around 100, maybe 200 printed homes. That's not that much.
If you count China, I think it's around 200.
Yeah. If I look at my father's company, one project is already 200 houses. There are so many buildings globally that if you only have 200 printed buildings, it's nothing. Based on that, it's not worth yet for an institution to do a lot of testing, etc.
Yeah, 3 years ago, I counted all the printed homes in an afternoon on two hands.
Yeah, and that's so the market is scaling up. But if you compare that with the complete construction industry, it's like so tiny yet.
200 out of billions.
Yeah, exactly. But that's if you look at the demand that there is globally for the need of houses. I think with among others concrete printing, but maybe also with that the fast brick robotic, there are a lot of opportunities. And also a lot of companies like Cobalt, ourselves, or Diamond Age. There is a lot of everyone can grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Construction's always been a decentralized industry for the
Yeah.
most part. But 3D printing offers to decrease some of that decentralization and benefit more from economies of scale, like a
If you
library that you
right,
can.
if you organize it in the proper way, we believe indeed in this holistic approach. But if you do it still in the old way, the conventional way, then it's decentralized. But I also believe if you do it in a decentralized way, printing, then you cannot build as efficient, utilize all the potential that is within the automation to its max, and then you will result in not reducing the cost or time.
One of those things you developed is the CyBe library.
Yeah.
Is there anything new about that?
The CyBe library we developed back in 2020. We are adding new models monthly, or adding tutorials, material data for the different materials that we are testing or developing. So that is growing. What we have done also on LinkedIn, created a community of practice where every month all the companies that we work with that have a CyBe printer, they actually have a digital meeting to share knowledge and experience. The guys in the UK, for example, are sharing experience with James or with Corox, Buffy,
Yeah, nice.
So that they don't need to reinvent the wheel themselves. And based on that, they can learn from each other and grow faster. And I think that is relevant eventually, to have a community working globally together, actually everyone with the same vision.
Yeah, and they can all go on the CyBe library, download your models, print them
Yeah,
easily.
exactly. And what we're doing with some new developments so that people also can add their own models. And what we're looking into is that they add models, get an NFT of it, so that they are the author, the owner of that model, and every time it's being downloaded and printed, they actually get a fee of it.
Oh, wow, nice. Will you manage the licensing of the designs too?
Yeah.
Interesting. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Will other companies like could a Cobod printer print your designs, or like would you let
That is
them?
something we're now the model we are now figuring out. How can we open it more open source, allowing other companies actually also to bring
Yeah,
and
that's tricky.
experience their knowledge. So that's something we're now not struggling with, determining how we could do this in a good way.
I know you wouldn't want to go on Cobod library.
Do they have a library?
I don't think so. Would you want to go on their library?
I don't know, because in my perception, but I don't know whether I'm correct, Cobalt is focusing on making the machinery, and not on, like our company, having their own team of architects, structural engineers, material engineers, that are we are building ourselves.
Yeah.
Based on that, that's also a construction company is working from project to project to project. What we want to do is in every project develop something new in the designs, but then based on that be able to capture that knowledge and be able to share it globally. And that's rather different than a regular construction company. And I don't, as Cobalt is not building themselves, and they're not capturing that knowledge like we are doing in the projects. For example, here in the project with here in Florida, we have a different way of integrating the facilities like the electricity conduits. And so we have all different design tools created, which we actually share on the library, which we can use in new projects. And then in the next project, we can develop something new and then actually stacking knowledge on knowledge.
And you mentioned you have plans to continue staying on the cutting edge of the CyBe projects. As your customers continue to develop projects, you want to keep doing like the biggest, best projects with the CyBe printers.
Yeah, we always need to do our own projects, and within those projects, develop something bigger, newer, in order to improve the entire system. So that eventually, based on the knowledge we gain with that, we can share that with our customers, so that they can use that in their projects in order to build faster and cheaper. So in every project, we want to do something new, and that's why it's also a marketing to build ourselves with our own systems.
Yeah.
and also learning about the local industry, etc.
I think that's the most powerful reputation you can have, is like that you're constantly developing your own technology, improving it. It's kind of like people love Tesla cars because overnight it gets a software update, has all this capability it didn't have last year.
Yeah.
So the product you bought 3 years ago is all of a sudden doing something you had no idea it was capable of.
Mm.
And it's similar in that if CyBe every year is going bigger, better, their own projects, all these people with these printers now have this whole new unrealized potential.
Yeah, they already have the potential to build 10 to 20% cheaper, and then if we further improve over the 1 to 3 years, and they get their updates, and they can reduce it even to 30%.
Is that estimate
What we
based on any
also
of the
have in
completed
place,
projects?
what we also have in place is within our partnership agreements. First, a company said we want to have an exclusive partnership agreement. So for New Zealand, etc. So we entered within partnerships exclusively in a kind of a region. Last year, we changed that. A non-exclusive partnership agreement, for example, with a partner in California, but with the first mover right. So if a company is a first mover with us, they purchase a printer. Every second and third mover, so that they bring in customers, they get a commission on the deal that we have with the second, the third, the fourth. So if we sell a printer to a company in California, they are the first mover. If a second company in California comes in, they get a commission of 3%, which is around 20,000 euros, based on selling it. Then eventually, instead of retraining the second and the third mover, our partner is going to train them. So they will be earning also money out of that.
That makes sense. You incentivize them to participate.
Exactly. Based on that, not exclusive, but actually open in order to grow the global community. And if you are the first mover, then actually you are at the front. And be able eventually to provide service, to provide the training, etc., and also start earning money based on that. So it's a program for that we created for other companies to grow along as we are growing.
The 10 to 20% cheaper estimate, is that based on a completed project, or is that based on the estimates for future projects?
That's based on some current projects, for example, in Curacao, that we've done. Not we done, we sold a printer, and back in 2021, we printed the first buildings there. Currently, they're building 53 houses in Curacao, all beach houses, and based on their estimates, it's like 10% cheaper.
Interesting. That's kind of a unique use case because it's hard to get materials in there, and so it's dissimilar.
The compound actually is indeed being shipped from out of Europe. The rest is all localized, so with local egg grades, and it's a concrete factory actually. So they already have the entire infrastructure to make the local CyBe mortar.
I would love to see a as-built list of how much each subcontractor was paid for each project, and see the comps of how much it would cost with traditional methods.
That's what those projects, for example, in Curacao, we before they purchase a printer, make the business case indicating then you could cut cost in this way by around 10%. During the training, we printed the first two buildings, and based on that, we calculated actually what it has cost in order to compare. Based on that, we can say in that project it was 10%.
Yeah, those guys before they got a printer reached out and I think did a consulting call with me at some point, and I got to get them on the podcast now. I haven't reached back out to them.
Yeah,
They're in the Caribbean, right?
Yeah,
I think it's the same group. I'm not 100% sure.
Could be.
But
and that's also what we want to do here with this project. We've got the cost breakdown of every element. Eventually, you want to, after the building is finished, evaluate whether indeed the cost estimation were right, and what should you change in the system or the way of building to improve your system or your approach of construction in the next project to improve that.
Typically in construction, there's always expenses overages 20%. Like the estimates are never right, but when you're doing it all in-house, like you're a family construction company, if you are owning the project afterwards too, then you don't really get that like owner builder conflict because it's the same group.
Yeah, true. If you have, but also if you do everything yourself, or the most important things, then you also have control over that. And if you outsource everything, then you rely on the price that you and that they give you, and then it could be that the costs go increase depending on what is happening in the market. We saw that in the last 2-3 years, the steel prices, the energy, everything increased. And so if you have everything in house, then you can have more control over that. And if you outsource it, then the next quotation will be higher.
That brings me to something I've been meaning to ask since yesterday. how the hell have you guys kept the prices the same on your printers? It's like you guys, Costco and Arizona iced tea are the only things that haven't gone up in price.
The print is always, yeah. We didn't had to increase our price because we have good conditions with our companies that we work together with. The only thing we had to do for the first time, that was last December, increase the material price for the first time in 10 years.
Wow. I'm sure the material, like what's the difference in volume? How much is being purchased now versus 10 years ago of CyBe mortar?
I think 10 years ago, when we had to 2016, 2017, when we did the Dubai project, we were like processing around 200 ton of material. Currently, it's more like 5,000 ton.
Wow.
So that's scaling up, but that's still not that much.
20 times more, 25 times more.
Yeah, true. But if you look at that, that means back in 2016, 17, one building in Dubai. Currently, with our system, globally, there are around 40 buildings being built or already delivered.
Yeah,
And
nice.
that's 40 buildings globally. That's, yeah, if you look at the construction industry, that's not that much.
The volume is a really interesting number. Imagining how that's going to increase over time.
Yeah, we believe, based on the project that we as well as our partners are acquiring, that by next year, around 500 houses with the CyBe machines will be delivered. The year after that, we will enter in 1,000 globally. The year after that, and then you are talking about real numbers, 3,000, 4,000 houses.
Yeah, very promising for the industry. It's I don't know, when is like the critical point of, have we passed the critical point, or
What do you mean the critical point for what?
I guess certainty, or maybe it's when there's a like proven business case, like maybe 100 homes in each state or city or something, where every contractor is just like, oh, this is just the way
The
we build
building
now.
here that we're doing now in Florida for ourselves is a critical point because based on that, people have come from different states in the last couple of days, and they had to see it in order to believe it, ask their questions. And that's a critical point to sell additional machines. Then they will have their critical point. We will train them and do the first project with them. That's then one project, and based on that, they can scale up. So critical point has been is being met, but then for projects first, because also municipalities and other ones, real estate developers, they first focus on one building. They want to see it and that there is a proof. And then they can purchase more printers in order to scale it up and acquire projects of 100, 200 housing units.
Yeah, it still seems like it's mostly early adopter personalities that are attracted to the technology.
Yeah, correct.
So I guess there's a lot of different
And
critical
that
points.
means early adapters are now getting in based on that proof, seeing the first buildings being built here throughout the United States. And normally, if you see the innovation chart, it takes like around 5 to 10 years before then a technology will be mainstream.
Yeah, a lot of people need a lot of social proof in order to make the jump.
Yeah, but it's not a lot of people, but also a lot of people are involved by building just one house. You've got a client, an architect, a structural engineer, the construction company, the local municipality that needs a permit.
You
so
didn't
you need
even
to have
mention any of the subcontractors yet. So
exactly
13 different trades.
So you need to talk with everyone, convince them, explain them how the system is being used. And that's why we do this also ourselves, because we are in a good place to actually explain everything, rather than if you purchase a printer and you have never printed a building and you need to design it, you don't know how to do so. And then it's also quite difficult to convince the local authorities.
So do you typically help your clients with their first building, or?
Yeah, within the purchase of a printer, there is a service contract that we train them on an actual project, and that means also we design that project to be able to be printed. So they, based on that, gain experience if they like to afterwards design and engineer their own buildings afterwards. So it's not only that we train them in printing as well as design and engineering, etc. And then if needed, within their second, third, or whatever project, we've got a team of 8 people in place, structural engineer, material engineer, architects that can support them with design and engineering and making sure that that design complies with the local regulations.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, currently it's also a big team, around 40 to 45 people, and still hiring.
Which roles are you hiring for right now?
We are searching for people that are actually going to work here in Florida, and also in the Netherlands. We are searching for people like Juan that can actually train or print. And then within our own factory, we need a complete new team of around 10 people to actually not only manage but also operate the machinery in order to build the projects like the project in Eindhoven.
So you mentioned some. Go ahead.
So by the end of this year, we anticipate to have a team of around 60 people,
Nice.
and that will grow further depending on the investments next year in etc.
Is that to facilitate the modular prefab system? And so have you bought that equipment yet?
No, it's not being bought. We have made it.
Okay. Wow.
With the gantry, in the last couple of months, we are printing, tweaking it, changing some things. Actually, this week and next week, we are printing different PPVC modules. Maybe I can share next week some pictures of it.
So you mentioned the gantry system, but also a separate prefab system.
It's a gantry system in a separate factory where eventually a housing factory where the houses are being produced.
Okay.
So we've got two factories. One factory which is making the robotic systems and the gantries, which are being sold. And then we've got a second factory where one of our own gantries is going to build those PVC modules, those modular systems. And then the same gantry later this year will be here in Florida to actually do the same.
Nice. Is housing still or real estate still your primary focus? Some customers want to do furniture, different art stuff.
Within housing, the housing industry, that's something I've grown up with. So that's the industry that is most common for me. I know that our customers, for example, we sold a printer to CBoost, and they're going to focus on artificial reefs. I believe that in Texas or etc., there are also companies that they use such a robotic system, not for housing, but eventually to print coral reefs. So it is possible, for example, that customers they use it for other industries, but that's then something they are figuring out and developing. For example, a partner in Miami, they're focusing on seawalls to be printed over there.
I think it's
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. CBoost chose to buy a CyBe printer because they used a lot of different printers to build some different reefs.
They work together with X3. Eventually, they also asked us already back in 2017 18 to print some objects because X3 was too busy. Then they saw our prices and we cut costs by around 50% compared with X3. And based on that, they hired us for one of the bigger artificial reefs that we printed ourselves in the Netherlands.
I was there.
And then it has been shipped to France and they're assembled and then put into the sea. Based on that experience and also the price that it was with using our system, they said, now we've got so many projects, we actually need to have a system ourselves. That currently is being made, and probably in June or July will be delivered so that they can work on their own projects.
When did they order it?
Last year, October, November.
So 8-month or so lead time?
Currently, the lead time is, if it is a new one, 6 to 7 months. But what we have done since October, we started to make the machinery in stock.
Nice.
So currently we have lead times of some of the systems of just 2 or 3 months.
Which systems would those be? Like smaller academic systems?
Or? No, the robot crawlers.
Wow.
We are building every month. At this moment, our production pace is making 2 machines every month, 2. Which means I can sell every month 2 machines, and based on that, reducing the delivery time. But in the end, you buy or you reserve a slot, a production slot, you pay for that. Eventually, what we see currently, all the slots are being taken all the way to until August.
Nice.
And then based on that, we can determine maybe we should increase the amount of production slots so that the production pace is not 2 machines a month, but 3.
If you're anticipating growth.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, and that is something with the gantry systems, we're going to do the same.
So you also build your own operating stations, and a lot of this work is in house. Your mixer pump stage table or station, I guess. Pretty much everything you guys are building yourselves. So the lead time, does it come from that assembly process, or is it
The
coming from?
lead time, and that is a thing. The longer lead time is due to the fact that we rely on the ABB robotics, and globally there is a
Shortage.
shortage of chips. And in a robot, there are a lot of chips, so that increases the lead time. When I started CyBe and purchased the first robots at ABB was back in 2017, the lead time was just 14 weeks. So if we can go back to that period, then the ABB robot, if we purchase it, the lead time would be 14 weeks. Then we can deliver machines within just 3 months, 3 or 4 months.
So the lead time on the ABB robot is really the killer of the
Yeah, that's
lead time.
currently like 20 to 30 weeks. That's why we said we're going to build those machines, pre-investing everything in stock so that we can reduce the lead time. But if there is maybe in 10 years not a shortage of chips anymore, then the lead time of the ABB stuff can be reduced. And then also the lead time of the machinery can be reduced.
How
And
many?
then that lead time on the robots, that's actually also the case within the gantries, because within the gantry we have the same controlling unit from ABB.
Knowing you guys like making a lot of stuff yourself, how many printers would you have to be building for it to make sense to start development on your own robotic arm?
Mm. Don't know, and I don't know whether we want to do our own robotic arm, because it's good that we work with ABB since they have a facility here in the United States, one in China, one in Europe. There all the robots come from. That's also if we start selling more machinery here in the United States, which will be achieved by the end of this year. By next year, what we do is making the factory to make the machinery to also establish one here in the United States, and then work together with ABB, which is located in Michigan, to get the robots from there in order to make the machinery for the American market, also in America.
Is there anything ABB can do to step up their game?
Um, uh, 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 I don't know. They also rely on the factories that make the chips.
Yeah,
So it's like the entire supply chain.
more chips is the big problem. It sounds like.
Yeah, but that's a global issue. Also, cars rely on that, etc.
But functionally, the robotic arm, you're happy with it. You don't need more stability.
No, the robotic arm as well. Also, the gantry is based on ABB, and we our partner of them. They've got a global coverage, and so also you need to look at maintenance. If we do everything ourselves,
Yeah.
then also if there is something broken, we need to fly in people, or we have this entire maintenance network. And that's why it's good to work together with ABB, because they already have this in place. If there's something not functioning, for example, within a robotic arm in South Africa, then there is a local ABB robotic center that can send a local guy, rather than that we need to fly all the way from the Netherlands to South Africa. Um, so it's good in some extent to work with partners, in this case with ABB for the robotics and automation. Around that, we do everything ourselves. And for the material, in that sense, work together with GCC, Corridor, and CTS in order to be able to globally supply the materials.
Yeah, there's also such a strong used robotic arm market that it's like an asset that can be leveraged for the financing or uh, anything else.
Yeah, and that also here in the United States, we work together with actually financing companies, so that our partners, if they want to have a printer, they don't need to pay up the full investment. They eventually have a lease agreement, because a construction company, they rely on the cash flow that is within the project, and that doesn't allow them to do an investment of 350,000 euros, but they can pay with their cash flow the leasing fees. So we here in the United States, we have a partner which actually would do the payment for the printer and then lease it out to that partner that actually has the projects. And I think with that, we're helping a lot of potential customers actually to be able to acquire a printer without doing that big investment.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Construction companies, most of them aren't used to putting out the money for a down or a whole piece of equipment out front. They're usually renting it for really
Exactly.
expensive prices.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the weekly rental, it would pay for itself in a year if they bought the equipment. But I don't know. That's just not that they
And then
work
with the
project to project.
leasing, and the construction company, they only need to focus on acquiring projects and make sure that
Hmm.
the project pipeline is full, so that the machinery is continuously printing, because then it is earning money, and with that money you can pay easily the leasing fee.
Yeah, especially if rates come down again, that'll be a really no-brainer option.
Yeah,
What are the rates like now for it's certainly more risky than a house, I imagine, so it'd be more than 7%. Uh, that's
it depends. For that, if a company has an interest to acquire the printer through the leasing,
mhm.
first our partner will validate the credibility,
Mhm.
and based on that, the rates will be determined.
Sure, I guess they
And
can
it
make
also
custom
depends,
deals.
yeah, right. And it also depends on which machine. Do you want to have a gantry, a robotic system, etc.? So there are different factors actually which will determine the rate.
Perhaps if they're a really big construction company, they prove they have cash flow and
Exactly. Uh,
makes sense. So,
and I think that is also something we have organized over the last couple of months, which is crucial to further open the American market and find new partners that eventually work together with us, using our systems, and start using it in their construction projects.
making it as easy as possible for someone to just get going.
Exactly, and that was in the last, well, I think, couple of years, a lot of work, a lot of learning by doing. But in the end, it's a proper fundament in order to work together, and based on us, sell not only just 2 machines a month, but grow to 4, 5, 6 machines being sold every month. So that's all in place.
Absolutely. You guys also, I don't even really have a question for this, but you do a great job avoiding cracking in your systems. A lot of printed houses have a lot of cracks. You guys don't.
It's about printing elements. And if you print a wall element of like 3 meters, 10 feet in one go,
Hmm.
then with that actually you avoid cracks. If you print a layer of just 2 inch or 3 inches, whatever, for 10 meters, but then you print 20 centimeters and then 20 centimeters, the expanding and shrinkage is always different. And that actually results in cracks. That is what you see with a lot of systems. That's also why we use a smaller gantry system and having some details within the walls in order to prevent cracks.
I guess if you print it all in one go in an hour, then the expanding and shrinkage kind of happens together while it's
Exactly.
still.
Yeah. And that avoids that. If we would print like half a meter and then print 2 days later again like 1 meter, then probably there will a crack occur due to the difference in expanding and shrinkage.
So is your material a very low shrinkage material, or it
Yeah,
doesn't matter because of the?
it's non-shrinkage material,
Mhm.
and that also prevents the cracking. And that's based on the compound that is actually within the material. And if you use a regular OPC, that's more expanding and shrinking. And therefore, if you especially then use a gantry system and printing walls of 10 meters, yeah, then you will end up with cracks.
It's interesting that you guys have been so open-minded towards materials, allowing groups to send you stuff to test, but you're still using the same mix. So nothing that you've tested has been superior to that, I guess.
Correct.
After all this time and testing,
No, yeah, other companies haven't been able to come up with better materials
mhm.
from our perspective.
Cost, quality.
Um,
There's so many different metrics.
yeah. Uh, I know what other companies believe. A partner from us in Morocco, like I mentioned, is working with Lafarge, their material. For him, that works better, maybe due to logistics,
Hmm.
but that's up to them.
Are you bound to an agreement with Kodor for some amount of years where you have to sell their material?
We have a partnership in place together with the material partners that we work together
Hmm.
both ways.
But they didn't invest, so they just invested time and energy.
Right, like we are investing time and energy, they're also investing their time and energy. Based on that, we see that the tonnage of material that is being sold is growing from 200 to 5,000 ton, and we anticipate that in the upcoming years the same growth curve.
So as you continue seasoning your NOI and preparing to raise money, what's your ideal investor look like?
That is something actually currently we are determining. So we're now starting with meetings with consultants in order to set everything in place. We have reserved for over 1 year in order to be
Yeah.
investor ready,
Okay.
selecting the right investors. So if somewhere next year in June we have found the proper partner to work with that can invest for the long term. We're just actually starting with going up that route.
On the spectrum of somebody that'll just give you cash and shut the fuck up to somebody that gives you money and really participates all the time every day, what are you looking for?
A company partner that actually participates.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be a strategic investor that also can help us grow further, or maybe multiple investors. We're, like I mentioned, just starting up that route with the first meetings and making the first plans. Based on that, we need like maybe 1 year to adjust the company in the right order. And then we've got a long-term vision till 2030 that we want to achieve. So the investor should be able to accommodate it for the long term. Because if it is just money, here you've got 5 million. Yeah, that is something we can also easily do from out of the family.
You want a milestone-based goal that can reach bigger heights.
Exactly.
Very interesting. And how have you noticed I guess you're not doing the fundraising yet, you're still planning what kind of investors you want?
We're now planning everything, adjusting also the company, restructure things in order to be ready to create the first investment round.
Some founders spend like 95% of their time just fundraising and they miss out on the whole like building the business side.
Yeah, we adjusted it. We first started with developing the technology,
Yeah.
then using it in construction projects. Eventually, a building is being built on a job site or in a factory in the future. And based on that, we created a company currently of around 45 people. And based on that, we can now start raising capital to further grow. But I believe you need to have these fundamentals because otherwise you get a lot of money, but you don't have anything to show off. And then you lose a lot of equity as well, which means you're losing control. And then, I've got a lot of value in my shares, but actually you're just a bubble.
Yeah, I want to ask you how the macro environment has changed fundraising, but since you haven't been seeking investment yet, maybe you don't. I mean, what's your experience been like? Have you noticed differences from
No,
investors?
no, because we never had to have meetings with potential investors, etc. Because we always were focusing on selling printers or building projects,
They're not even in your world.
and that's like in cash flow. Of course, when we did in 2015 this accelerator program, we got in a community of investors. So we know a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't spend time with meeting them, etc., because we focused always on sales.
I bet some of them wish they spent a little more time.
Sales, cash flow, etc. That's the maybe the more difficult path that we followed. But based on that, we've got leads, we've got sales. Turnover is currently growing, doubling every year. We have a couple of years, also this year and last year, a positive margin, 5 to 10%. So I think that's a good fundamental to have a company, and also be trustworthy as a company, which for us, we anticipate would be easy to find the right partner in order to work with and further scale up the company.
Yeah, I think if you hit all those things like trustworthiness, cash flow, then you're investable in any economy.
Exactly.
Uh,
And that's why we are like in a good position to find. We are in control. I don't need an investor, but I need by next year we anticipate we need money to quicker scale up
Yeah.
than we would have done if we keep being bootstrapped.
So you probably won't go for like a Reg A type of situation, raising money from crowdfunding.
No.
Those are fun.
Yeah. Yeah, but we would need a strategic partner that actually can help us scale it up faster. And then we will determine it, currently making the plans, restructuring the organization, and based on that, we will see which companies, selection of companies or partners might fit and match.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then you need to talk with them and see whether there is also on a personal level a match, because eventually you're going to work for the long term. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's companies that have been fundraising the whole time, like founders that are only focused on fundraising all the time, they have a very different answer to that question. They're in pain from all of a sudden companies want to do due diligence, which is a brand new term that didn't exist last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, but since we have everything in place, I'm not that scared
Yeah.
of doing a due diligence.
There are people who are.
So let them come in. We are selling operation-wise. We're up and running and growing. So let them come in. Currently, also last week, this week, a lot of potential customers, they do their due diligence on the job site, see the printer actually printing. So since we are focusing on having that the quality in place, let them come, and then they will be amazed in order to be interested to work together with us.
Yeah, I look forward. I mean, maybe this is a little bit dark, but with the hurting economy, I appreciate the honesty and reality that it brings out in that people can't just like there's less funny money around and you can't just raise $1 billion for like one house that you built somewhere.
Yeah, that is what is happening currently in the market, and I think it is foolish. And that's a bubble, because eventually, would such a company become maybe the next Catera, which was the wooden factory company of which a Japanese investor invested like 1.5 billion, and they just lost it. 1.5 billion. You can spend 1.5 billion in to a lot of other different things that actually will bring good for humanity. It's what's gone. That's actually what you still see. So I think it is good that in the current market, a lot of things actually collapse, and that we come a bit more back to being realistic.
Is there a next Catera that you'd predict, or is that too mean of a question?
I don't know. I hope not, because if there is a next Catera from out of the 3D concrete printing industry, that would give a bad name to every other 3D concrete printing company. So I hope not, but you never know.
I like to think that I could have a little impact on preventing catastrophic damage to the industry if it was a group that was blatantly lying and that they failed because they were doing things that were deceitful or trickery, things that other companies aren't doing. If a company failed like Katera style, and then I could go back and see like, yeah, but they said this, this, and this. That's why they failed. Not all the companies are going to fail. It was an isolated incident. It could be presented in a, if it's true that it's not catastrophic to the industry.
True. It doesn't need to be catastrophic, but it will give a bad name. And if you are in the position of starting to raise money, then that potential investor is going to look twice before they really want to work together with you.
Yeah, things change once you raise a lot of money. After you guys raise $100 million, you'll have a board, and some PR lady will say, "You can't talk to Jared this week. You gotta wait." But
yeah, but currently I've got a lot of potential customers, etc., sales that also need attention, so that I cannot talk with you every day.
At least
so there is always something that there is always a challenge, and there's always different.
It's the third podcast. Every year is good enough for.
Okay, fine.
And yeah, I plan on going to Europe, and I've already seen you in 3 countries. So hopefully that list will keep growing over the years. And America is so hot right now. It's very hard for me to justify going somewhere else, especially because I've promised so many groups I'll visit when I go to Europe. I can't just go and visit one.
No, I mean, there are more and more groups as well.
I have to visit like 30 or 40.
Yeah, right. So you need to be there for like 1 or 2 months.
Yeah, I'm planning on 6 when the Cybertruck comes out. It's played to my advantage that it hasn't come out yet because I can use that as an excuse to push it up. When it comes out, I'll go to Europe.
Cool.
Maybe I'll never be
there. More than welcome.
Cool.
Cool.
I think that'll be an interesting gimmick for first Cybertruck in Europe for going around all the 3D printing construction companies. We'll see when that happens. Hopefully by next summer. I'd like it to be summer. Europe is much nicer in the summer.
Yeah, and then you can do your certification, certification again.
Or maybe even the next up certificate, the advanced.
And then use the gantry system to see the PPVC being printed.
What about, we didn't talk about slicing at all. Have there been big developments in the slicing region?
Last year we launched Chisel. Chisel is our slicing software. We launched Chisel 8. I give that to all the companies. In that we had some, mainly the processing is easier, so it's quicker being sliced, and we've got some features in order to print multiple objects in one go.
Cool. Yeah, the slicing is it's not difficult. I learned to like within 2 weeks with you guys, but there are some nuances, like details,
Yeah.
um, understanding the path. And some people, it's great that you have a slicer. There are some teams out there writing their G code by hand. Uh, did you know that?
I've heard some rumors indeed that they write their G code by hand, or even go to the website Fiverr to ask somebody somewhere
Okay.
to could you do this for us? And then based on that, they've got. We actually provide our slides also to other companies
Mhm.
that are in the 3D computer printing business.
They can like license it out or
Well,
cool. Yeah, having a slicer to do that by hand in a world of pursuing automation.
yeah, true. But these companies, they focus on printing as a mechanical engineer. They're not a software engineer,
Mhm.
and we have all those people in place in order to create the entire system with all those different people.
There's definitely a huge range of some teams are just trying to get a house printed. Like, it doesn't matter. Maybe they'll mix material by hand and do the G code by hand, and it's really not automated
Yeah,
at
but
all.
yeah, that's foolish. It should be automation, so that every and based on that, you reduce the amount of manual labor. Currently, here in the system that we have here, it is manually starting up, but we have options on the mixed pump system that everything is being automated, so
Mm-hmm.
that the mixed pump system is actually connected to the control unit of the printer, and then that actually starts up the material and also has the values of the mixing, the amount of water and the amount of additive based on the outside temperature.
What about data collection?
That actually, based on that option within the automated mix pump system, we are measuring the temperature,
Mm-hmm.
gathering data, so that eventually being improved the mix ratios.
Yeah, that's going to
That's
be
also why
very powerful.
during printing you see Kevin all the time measuring the temperature of the rotostator of the material. That data is being included, saved in Artisan. Artisan is our software to control the printer. So within every print, you need to keep track of the print statistics. So the temperature of the material, the temperature of the rotostator, the temperature of the water, etc., and that's all being collected. And then Artisan, we've got a data set where we have all the data of every print. Based on that, we can automate the process of the mixed pump system. And then when it measures the temperature, it directly knows based on the data what the right variables should be for mixing the CyBe mortar.
So you use, I know you run accelerant through the system before you start printing
No,
with water.
the water is directly being mixed
Water 100%.
with a retarder.
Okay, yeah.
And then the material is from first just water, then material, starting it up, taking like 1 or 2 minutes.
Wait, first water and then water and retarder.
The water and retarder directly together.
Okay.
Being mixed, and then starting up with 0% material to 100% material, so that the conveying of the material is like continuously, but still we are like high in the water at 250 liters, and then and that's depending on the outside climate and the temperature of the water, etc. You reduce the amount of water from 250 to 200 or 190 liters, and then at the same time also your retarder is from 6.6 liters being reduced to 1 liter an hour or half liter or whatever. And that all depends on the outside climate. During printing, all the data is being collected in Artisan. So we've got a bunch of data over the last 10 years. And with that, if a company selects the automated mixed pump system, then actually all the data is in that system, and it knows with the sensors measuring the temperature, etc., how to do this in automatically without having doing that manual.
In my operator test, I forgot to turn on the water heater, so I ended up using almost no retarder in the system. And it printed like it worked. It probably could have been a lot better if I.
There were always like different ways in
Yeah.
order to make it printable, and that is something based on experience. But yeah, you did done the training within 1 or 2 weeks, and within those 1 or 2 weeks, you've got experience in order to operate the machine.
Yeah, the retarder that goes through in the beginning, is that forming the lubrication layer?
The retarder, no, the hose is actually with the water is sufficient lubricated. The retarder is specifically to reduce the setting time. If you wouldn't use the retarder, then the material would be set within 2 minutes, for example. And with the retarder, it is 5 minutes, and that's those 2-3 minutes difference. That's not crucial in order to be able to print a wall in just a couple of minutes.
That makes sense, especially because your material has it has like that gloss finish when it's printed fresh on the outside. That's really smooth from the material separation, right, in the hose from the frit to the shear.
Yeah. In the hose, that's what's happening in the hose. The smaller particles, which actually is a cementitious material, that goes faster on the outside, and the bigger size particles are on the inside, going slower. And that's why, indeed, on the outside you've got like this, like coating, which is actually all the cementitious material.
Fine stuff.
Exactly.
So that means that you have a plug flow zone in your extrusion head. How does that factor into your mix design or your planning for the printer? And I think that's something we haven't talked about yet.
With your mix design, you need to have a good distribution of the different particles, and that should be within a kind of an S-curve, within the particles of in between 0 millimeters, the cementitious particles, all the way to the bigger grain sizes of around 3 to 4 that we have in our mixture, millimeters. But within the system, it's also possible to have bigger grain sizes or even processed concrete. But then it's about adjusting the system with processing particles of like 1 centimeter. It's about having a bigger hose of not 25 millimeter diameter, but 35. And that is also possible in our system.
Have you ever considered ways to have a stronger lubrication layer that would reduce or eliminate the plug flow zone?
No.
No. I'm just trying to learn more about some of the sciencey stuff behind 3D printed construction, and there's a lot of it.
Some things we said we don't need to focus on because the system that we have it's working well, so we leave it as that. And with the time that we have to develop new things, we focused on other stuff.
It's an interest. I only learned about plug flow zones a couple weeks ago, so that seems to be the cause of a lot of clogging in systems, especially systems that run for like 8 hours or so, because the material's like funneling back up.
But that's also why with a gantry system, a big one, you print like 8 hours in one go. We print with the robotic system on the crawler wall elements, which takes like half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours. So that prevents also, because you're just printing like 1 hour, that happens.
So your gantry system, you'll be printing a lot more time. How will you mitigate that?
4 hours indeed, which is still not that long.
Sure. Cool. There's so many different equations, models, and when I've talked to some printers with a lot of hands-on experience, they say once you actually start printing on site, you throw those models out the window because there's too many unforeseen variables and stuff. Has that been your experience, or are there some?
What do you mean with you throw the models away?
Like the stress, strain, viscosity, all the like the Roussel equations and the Herschel whatever equations. The math that works in an academic setting doesn't usually translate the same on site, is what I've been told.
No, true. We see that in every site. Not in every. Currently, it's all. Our system is pretty robust, and based on the experience that we have gained in printing in 2017 in Dubai, in Milan, in Saudi Arabia, in the guys in Qatar, in Sharjah, etc., Morocco, South Africa. Paraguay, Curacao, now in Florida, we actually see the similarities. And since the system is pretty robust, we know how to tweak, and it's just tweaking, for example, the water temperature. We increase it or we downsize it. And we know which factors that we need to tweak in order to have it up and running here or in any other country.
Yeah, it just takes that skill to get that qualitative ability until you have all the data where it can be
exactly
automated. And that's probably a little bit harder than like my training just to print once in your warehouse to get a brand new system up and running in a new location.
True, but like here, it took us like 2 hours from the truck to assemble the printer. When we had the material, it was like the hose not connected to the printer, process the material. You always start with those high values of 250 liter water and 6.6 additive. and then it's gradually downsizing it. So
Mhm.
you've got one bucket of waste, and then you already know what the right settings would be here in Florida or in every other region globally.
So most of the time when you go to a new site, you're kind of dialing it down, watching the qualitative metrics of the
Yeah,
material,
exactly.
and then once it's good, you're like, okay,
Yeah,
these are the
okay,
numbers.
this is good, and then you can directly connect it to the printer and start printing.
And then in the afternoon, you can target those numbers, but they may be a little different.
Yeah, there are of course the rotor stator is a wearing part, and as along after 10 or 20 walls being printed, you need to tweak it a bit, but that is all just marginal.
Is there any way to eliminate the rotor stator, such a pesky, expensive part?
Yeah, indeed, there's something also what we're figuring out.
It's tricky. We went over on time.
Cool.
It's been a really entertaining conversation, though. I've been enlightening. I hope. Is there anything we left out?
No, I don't think so. I think most of the things are touched.
Cool. Well, thank you, Barry. Look forward to the next time we get to
Thank
do
you as
this.
well.